So it's not that it's actually awful, but it's identifying that there's a negative thought pattern that goes inside my mind that normally debilitates me, and I try to hide it. And when I try to hide it, I disconnect with my humanity. And when I disconnect from my humanity, I disconnect with everyone. And when I do not integrate those parts of me that are awful, I can never be whole.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Patrick Cook. Welcome to Being. Being is a place where we gather to explore some of life's most difficult questions. What does it mean to lead a meaningful life? What does it mean to live a life of purpose or on purpose? How do we make sense of the world? Really, what we're asking is, what the hell is going on? My intention with this podcast is to explore what it means to be human in the modern world through the lens of creativity, consciousness, and personal development. Through authentic conversations with a wide array of guests, including artists, intellectuals, scientists, visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, Being ventures to make collective sense of an increasingly complex world with the unifying goal of building a sustainable future for all. As humanity continues to march full steam towards extinction, we can no longer afford to simply ask, what is best for me? The question now must become, what is best for me and the whole simultaneously? And so, dear audience, I want to inspire you to take full responsibility, to find your purpose, and to engage your evolution as a conscious agent. I challenge you to live your being. If you're enjoying the content, please do subscribe to the show and get a new episode delivered directly to your device every Friday. And as always, I love hearing from you. So please do rate and review the episode on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or whichever platform you prefer. For show notes and more information, head on over to being-podcast.com. Tinamarie Clark is a model, mother, and the creator and author of the Shift Stir method, a 5-step mindfulness method which equips women with the tools they need to shift their perception and move through life with greater ease. A captivating speaker, Tinamarie helps women of all backgrounds discover the transformative power of everyday experiences. The Shift Stir method encourages women to get vulnerable and honest with themselves, to own your awful, and turn negative thought patterns into more empowering ones. Tinamarie has spoken at many conferences and retreats like Say Hello Wellness and been interviewed by leaders in wellness like Deepak Chopra, Melissa Wood Health, and been featured in publications like Vogue, Marie Claire, Hamptons, and more. Tinamarie Clark, welcome to Being. Tinamarie Clark, welcome to Being. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is really exciting. So you are the creator of the Shift Stir method, which sounds incredible. And I'm really excited to dive into that and unpack it a bit. But your website says it gives you the practical steps to shift your life from chaos to peace, from self-sabotage to calm confidence, from hot mess to cool and collected. I love that. And all you need are your own thoughts. Sounds absolutely amazing. And again, I'm really excited to dive into that and unpack it. But one of my favorite parts of this podcast is talking to people and hearing about their journey, hearing about their story, how they started, what their childhood was like, and what brought them to the place that they are now. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to sort of go right back to the beginning and ask you about your childhood. Were you supported as a child? Did you feel, how did your childhood bring you to the place you are now?
Yes. Just hearing you read back my website, I'm like, yeah. Like,
right? It sounds amazing.
You like getting high on your own supply. Because totally. I'm like, no, and it's really such a power. I'm so glad that I found this within myself and being able to share it with other people, because in my childhood, I would say that I had a really early exposure to being ashamed of myself and ashamed
Mm.
of my family. We grew up in Section 8 housing, and I knew that we were poor. We grew up in Souderton, Pennsylvania, which is a middle-class neighborhood, but we were in Section 8 housing. So it just felt like the delta between the people I went to school with and my family was so vast.
Mm.
My mom was a single mother of 3 kids, and she was a hot blonde picking up her 3 kids with no father. She left my father when we were really young, and she was just she was a rebel, and I love that about my mom. But it was we stuck out like a sore thumb. We were these wild. I felt like we were feral in a way,
Wow.
which it was the kind of a love-hate thing, because I love that we were wild and we were really my mom. I would say my mom's parenting style was unorthodox. She
Okay.
really, now it's considered like conscious parenting, but at that time it was just wild.
Right.
So I grew up with my 2 older brothers. I was really kind of raised, even though I was very feminine and I loved, fashion and all of that, I was really raised like an additional boy.
Mm.
Because they just beat me up, and I was really I had no friends, so I was always with my brothers because they had friends. So I would say that my introduction to shame was really early on, and that would set off a domino effect of self-sabotage, not feeling enough, and creating ways in which I could cope with that to be able to fill myself up.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter if it was positive or negative. I just knew how to get my juice. And I would do that through, being bad or getting kicked out of school, or, being defiant, always challenging authority. And that got me, that challenging authority is such a blessing now, because I challenge my ego's authority in myself.
That's so awesome.
And I'm glad I learned that lesson. But as a child, that really got me into a lot of trouble. So I just felt like I really was in a lot of pain.
Right.
As a kid, I was just in a lot of pain. I didn't know how to process what was going on within me. And it just manifested in destructive patterns. And I just looked like a bad kid.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any such thing, but I was the bad kid, but I was really just the hurt kid that was afraid of being seen and exposing that I was never going to be the jock. I was never going to be the academic. I was never going to be all of these things. So what position and role could I fill with absolute certainty? And that was the badass.
Right.
And that was the wild child. So I, filled that role really well. And it just caused me, it worked until it didn't. And then that point where your pain is so, and your coping mechanisms, your default defenses, as I call them in the book, cause you to either continue down that path or change. And I knew that I had to change, because if not, without the method and applying the method, and it went unmethodized for many years, I know I would be either in jail, on drugs, pregnant with multiple baby daddies, which is no problem. But the reason why I would have been doing that was because I was living in chaos and fear.
Yes.
And I just had, the depths of the destruction that my ego, the lengths it was willing to go was so far that there was nothing off the table when it came to what my ego could come up with to defend myself. And it was like, I would defend myself from an eye roll with this disproportionate reaction. And my reactivity just caused me so much problems. It was just this cycle where it would be like, okay, I would feel ashamed of myself and I would react in a way that would cause me to feel guilty and then ashamed of myself. And I was always in this like repair attempt to cover up my shame.
Negative feedback loop.
Oh, it was, and you have no idea that you're in it. When you're in it, you just know, I feel like crap. This is not good. I feel out of control. There's no sense of peace and grounding. I just felt like, like a red balloon flapping in the wind. I never knew if I was going to be blown away. I don't know if I was going to be here. I just was no control. Yes. And my thought of control was really as a form of fearful based control. So if I did have control, it was through force. And I think that really the shift stir method, applying it, has really shown me that control is not through action, and it's through an internal thing of when things are out of control, I can still control how I'm perceiving this and shift my perception. 100%. And I think that gave me that was the real control. That was the real point of power. Because I was exchanging this false sense of control that was from my ego. And then when I started to explore, I was like, wait, this just feels so much more. It's more accessible, meaning all the things I don't have to tinker with the external world to get this.
Oh my God, I love it. I just want to move back to what you said at the very beginning, that you were instilled with a sense of shame right from the beginning. And is that something that you learned? Was that something that maybe was cultural? Like, I'm really fascinated about ancestral patterns and how they're proliferated unconsciously. And that's why I love talking about people's childhood. It's like when we're ingrained with these cultural beliefs and shame and guilt, and how do we overcome those? How do we develop the consciousness first to become aware of them and then shift out of them? So was that, do you feel like that was a cultural ancestral thing that was maybe your mother was passing on unconsciously?
It is so fascinating that you're asking me this, because nobody's ever asked, but
Seriously?
It's so important. Yes.
Oh my God. It's like the basis of everything.
No, I had started, so I have a really deep and beautiful connection with my mother. She's she's just I feel like, I don't know what they call them in Star Wars, but there was the master Jedis, and then they were their little
apprentices.
Students.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like an apprentice. And my mom is just like a Jedi master. She really has done such profound work. And we have this deep connection, and we can talk about these things. And I remember, having this conversation with my mom about how a child interprets the external world when they are telling their parents. How does it absorb to the child? So let's just say I had an experience where somebody made fun of me at school. And if your parent has shame or is, sensitive to shame, their reaction will basically, or 9 times out of 10, be coming from their default defense.
Totally.
The way that they handle it. So I believe that my mom had been, had experienced shame in her childhood. And when I would come home from my experiences at school, I would speak to her about it. And I didn't have the mother that was blowing me off. And I didn't have I had the mother that said, well, let me go kick their ass.
Right.
I had the mom that was like, show me where they live.
Right.
I had the mom that had my back so intensely that it also inadvertently confirmed the truth of that shame. And I ingested it.
Yes. Right.
Meaning as if I didn't have someone saying, because I think about it with my children, I have two boys, and I think that there's a delicate balance with parenting, because you don't want to be the parent that's like, that's not happening, and not affirm your child's truth and what they're telling you.
Right.
But I do think that there's somewhere in the middle that I think works for different families. But as I observe it, and as I deal with it with my children, how would I like to receive their information that I can still hear them, but without confirming that that person is right, or that they should ingest that. And I think that because my mom was so young, and we were all really growing up together.
Right.
We were growing up together. So if I could imagine, because I was talking to my partner, David, and I was like, oh, so how did it go with you if like you were made fun of and you told your dad? And he would say, Turkey. He probably doesn't even know where that is in a map.
Right.
Because they're from Turkey. They were from Izmir, Turkey. And they would say, gobble, 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 gobble.
Right.
So he never ingested that personally, because he was like, do you even know where that is on a map? Yeah. Like, he was able to use his brain and his wherewithal about geography. And that was a defense for him, where he was able to defend himself through knowledge. And that can cause, a desire to want to be really really educated to the point where you feel invincible. There are many patterns and many paths that can manifest. But I think that even just being aware that is a part of our connected journey. My mom and I chose each other to reincarnate on this earth, to be together, and all of my family members. I just recently lost my father, and one of the things that gives me so much peace is knowing that I chose him. He chose me. All of this that we chose was to evolve and to grow. And there was nothing that we signed up for before we came to these bodies that was not designed for our fundamental evolution and our family's evolution.
Totally.
So when I think of my mother and I think, oh, she had this experience of shame, and then we adopted some of those default defenses. And then through awareness and her doing her own work, we were able to kind of deconstruct that to be like, wait, this can stop with us.
So
this
powerful.
Pattern can stop with us. Meaning you were the first person and you were the most courageous. My mom was the most courageous because she didn't have the skills.
Right.
I had a mother that really did the work to be able to unpack that and really figure out what was that within me. So we have the ability to come here, and she had this, it was brought down to me, and we collectively get to deconstruct that. And that's so powerful. I feel so lucky that I get to have that as, just a partner to do that work with, because it's deep. It's really like the fundamentals of how you operate.
So totally. And I think what you're talking about, the power to break those ancestral lines through our own awareness and consciousness is so powerful and so needed. And a lot of people are waking up to that fact now. But I wanted to ask you, we were sort of talking about the negative feedback loop that you were in of, challenging authority and externalizing that shame and as kind of a survival mechanism. So I'm really curious, when did you shift from the realization that, okay, I can't control my external world, this is an internal thing? And what were the circumstances that brought you to that awareness? Because I think it's really important for people who might be in that situation to have some practical examples of other people have broken out of it.
People ask me this all the time, and it's not one moment. And I don't want people to think that there's this one moment where you're like, okay, my life has changed.
Right.
Or, oh, there's this, I can remember pivotal moments, but really it's like, it gives you a glimpse of what is out there. And it's your job to seek and seek more glimpses of that and
Right.
invest your time in uncovering that. And I believe that everyday experiences are opportunities for that
Right.
ability, because we're getting annoyed. And anytime a stir in the shift stir method is anytime we deviate into a negative thought pattern where we feel as though, I call it the eye of the stir, the part of me that identifies with this narrative that is coming in through my ego's narration.
Right.
The I, the me, you hurt me, you offended me, you didn't consider me, like the I, the part of me that identifies with self as a point of taking offense, being upset, getting
Right.
rattled. But I do think that there are times, and I am not someone that is able to just think about things when there's not crisis. I am like, I dive in when there's crisis, and then I hibernate, and then I apply.
Right.
Crisis, hibernation, apply.
Awesome.
And so I think that all of those times, whenever I was in pain, when my destructive default defenses caused chaos, I would have an opportunity to look back and see what my part was. And I think that that's one of the most powerful things my mom would say when we would be working through stuff, and I would be so offended, and I would lay out my material of why this person sucks. And my mom, and when we would get off the phone, she would say something that was the most infuriating yet liberating thing. And it was like this, paradox, because I'd be infuriated that she didn't get me, but then really liberated, because if it wasn't this, then maybe I had a chance to change.
Right.
She would say, Tina, I know you think this is about your boss. I know you think this is about Sarah. I know you think this is about your dad. But I promise you, this is about you.
Yes.
And that invitation to return to self was often like refused. Because I'm like, how could this be about, how could them being an asshole have anything to do with me?
Totally.
It felt so separate. But really, that invitation was to recognize and to look into what part of me and what narratives are ignited when I'm encountered with this stimulation from the external world. What goes on within me that I'm so uncomfortable with? There is a belief system that is getting pushed on by this experience that is inviting me to look. When I'm in pain and I'm uncomfortable, it's an invitation for me to return back to sender, meaning go back into your unit and sift through what is really going on. Wait, why is it that something so mundane, something so an eye roll could make me furious? Well, how is that possible? And I was so sensitive. I would go from stir to stir. Like, I couldn't walk down the street without being irritated and, knocked off course.
Right.
And that's really my, why I do this work, is because I was so annoyed with constantly getting knocked off course. I saw everyone outside, and I remember looking at people and being like, how do you get through life? Because I'm just debilitated every 2 seconds, and you seem to be able to do businesses and have great relationships. And I'm just trying not to burn down the house, like emotionally. And I was like, how are these people able to do this? They have to think something different. They have to have a different way. Because the amount of time that my stirs would take, I could be in them for a month.
Right.
Of just that chaotic thinking and that victimization and that just hurt and irritability and agitation. So there really isn't a point in which, like, there have been times that I knew I had to get my shit together. Like, I almost lost a modeling contract. I almost, was always sabotaging relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, anything. I was always choosing a negative path. I was always viewing things as people were against me. And I was so sensitive because I felt like I was like a radar detector, or like I was always surveying to see if somebody was trying to injure me by shaming me, because I did not want that pain. So I was very quick to react because I was using my arsenal of tools that I had set up to defend myself against these possible injuries to my ego. I would whip out my verbal knife and I would cut you. I really spent so much time sharpening those skills, sharpening those weapons, that I was like a little ninja. I had it all there, and really realizing that I could lay down my sword and still be powerful, that the ultimate strength was laying down my sword and surrendering. That's when I felt like I became like a master within myself. Even if there was, chaos around, it was like, I don't need my sword. I don't need that, because my power cannot be taken away from me. You could try to hurt me, but I don't need to constantly be drawing a weapon to protect myself emotionally. I'm strong enough within myself.
So beautifully articulated, and I'm getting chills just listening to you talk about it, because it resonates deeply with me and my journey. And I've found shifting that perspective from external to internal takes a level of, first, responsibility. You have to take responsibility for your own reactions, like you're talking about, but also a level of self-trust. And a lot of people don't do it is because it is painful. And even if you're aware of your pain, our natural instinct is to move away from pain. And for me, alcohol was my escape. I was just like, that is too painful. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to look at it. I'm just going to pretend it's not there and numb myself. And I think that's what a lot of people end up doing. But like you said, once you have the courage to sort of shift and look towards your pain and shed the light of your awareness and your compassion on it, then it has an opportunity to come to the surface and heal. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about. Laying down your sword, surrendering, realize that the fight isn't out there. It's all of your power is inside of you.
It is so, and it's a catchy phrase, like, oh, your power is inside of you. And all of these phrases dwarf the significance of the actual power. Those words could not even capture the energy that is truly behind them. They become popular and flippant, but they're really so true. Like the feeling that one has when they're sitting in their truth and their power that has been cultivated by choice and through suffering, that creates this grit and this thing. It's a level of conviction. It's like I become like evangelical in a way about this method, because I'm like, no, I know that it works because it saved me. If I didn't, I just know where I would be, and it's nowhere good. I know that changed. And I think just being able to notice how often we use these, we use things to comfort ourselves.
Totally. And distract and numb.
Distract, all of it. We just use these things that will comfort those thoughts. So that can be, and I believe, I call it the ego epidemic, because I think it's the most pervasive and erosive silent killer of our time.
Totally. And responsible for most of the problems and atrocities we see in the world.
Thank you. I'm like, oh my gosh, road rage, all of, like, you don't think that the basis of, the opioid epidemic and alcoholism is not wanting to quiet the ego's narration of you. It's just wanting to soften that. And that's, and it's when we offload pain
Mm-hmm.
We want to
Externalize
push
it.
it away. We
Yeah.
want to get this off of me. So
Yeah.
if I am feeling and I'm stirring and I want to offload that, I could offload that on, somebody. I could hurt someone physically.
Totally.
I could offload it by, drinking a bottle of wine. I could offload it by, constantly getting into the same relationship and never going from one person to the next and never really experiencing the truth of it.
Yeah.
And I think we are in a culture that is designed to make us think and believe that those things are actually fulfilling. That they will give you, and there's a temporary, like there is a momentary sense of relief, meaning when you have that drink, you will actually access that relief.
Yeah.
It's just not sustainable.
Totally.
And I think that that's really the crux of this is the sustainability of it. Can I repeatedly do this and expect the same results? It's like, okay, well, if I had one glass of wine tonight, over the next 3 months, I'll probably need 2 to get to that same level of numb.
Yeah.
So that continues, and that, is a cycle that you're aware of, and that can be so destructive and really setting up systems and being aware of systems that are sustainable, that I could do this and access this thing. And it's not going to get any less powerful or more powerful. It's like the shift stirrer method, I always say, it's foolproof, yet my application of it is flawed.
Okay.
Meaning, if I access it's as powerful and as potent as it's ever going to be when I'm applying it.
Right.
And if I don't. It doesn't change its form. It doesn't change its power. So I don't need to have like 2 shift stirrer method books to be okay. It's like these principles are the things that guide me, and I don't need anymore. It's there. And it's there when I want to access it. And I think choosing systems that are sustainable, that I can get relief from. And this is, as you know, not for the faint of heart. We're hardwired to reject that and run from self. And society and everything is giving us copious amounts of ways to escape.
Yeah.
You can't walk down the street without being advertised to directly to escape your reality, or to have a glimpse of, you can get this like little taste of instantaneous relief. But that's not sustainable relief. And I think that many people are getting to that point where they're like, wait, this isn't actually comforting me. It gives me a short little burst or a short little sensation, but it's not really giving me what I'm really searching for. And I think that we are all, now that we're, going through this global pandemic, we're kind of sensing that.
Yeah. People are waking up.
Because we're at home with self, and there is an awakening going on. You're either going to go this way or that way. And I think, and that's what, when I go in the, a fearful mode, and I'm like, what does this mean? When is this ever going to, I'm like, no, but I'm also inspired by all the people that have the time and the space to ask those big questions.
Yes.
So if I need to stay home for a little bit, for the collective to have that, including myself, because it's not like your work is done and you're like, you get to this point. It's like, no, I'm having to explore myself as well. So if that is happening on a collective basis, and that there's even a small fraction of people that are getting a glimpse of that, it's really an inside job, that makes me so happy. And so I'm like, yeah, there's other people on this, path. There's other people, illuminating the way and way showing and sharing their story. That's really exciting to me. So that softens the blow of all this going on, the chaos. I'm like, wait, how can I make sense of this?
Yes.
I can make sense of this by saying, like, if me and my family are all connected, then if we're all connected, there is something there that is not going to be talking about on, CNN.
Right.
You're not going to be talking about the evolution of your soul on mainstream media. But when I look below all of the craziness and the chaos, I'm like, wait, there's a lot going on for people to have the opportunity to look differently. And they, ingested so many things that haven't worked, that I think people are starting to get that. And I'm excited for them, because I'm excited for the peace that they potentially can have and access. And that's what I want for anyone. I want that for myself. I want to remind myself that I have peace, or that I have access to that peace. And that makes me happy.
Me too. And I totally agree with you. This is an opportunity, a global opportunity for everybody to be still, to take stock, to reflect, to inquire, and to really come to something that is meaningful, to question everything that they've been taught, all the beliefs they're operating from, and the people that are doing that. I honor each and every one of you, because it is challenging. It is painful. It does suck a lot. But what's happening, I think, and I agree with you, we're reaching a tipping point of people waking up. And the more we can, and that's a primary reason I started this podcast, is to share your message, people like you, and to put it out there in the world that there are real people going through real struggles. And here are some practical steps that you can take to facilitate your own journey. One of the things you mentioned earlier, though, is that about the culture and the system not supporting that journey. And in fact, it's the antithesis. It celebrates ego, identity, and distraction. And I worked in advertising for a long time. That entire industry is based around reinforcing your not enoughness, right? And like they're selling to you based on your not enoughness. And so it's a systemic cultural issue as well, which makes it even more difficult to escape, because you're caught in that sort of unconscious programming cycle. So it's a momentum that is difficult to go against, and another reason why people don't do the work. So again, I applaud you and everybody who has the courage to do this work, because it is so powerful. And I am super hopeful as well, because each one of us that does this work then contributes to a collective consciousness of awakening that will fundamentally change the planet. And I feel like we've reached that tipping point and maybe been past it. Now it's just going to play out. So that's how I keep Go ahead.
I completely agree. And when you say like, I applaud, I always think of it like when I think of my samurai and I'm laying down my sword, I truly, on a soul level, bow to the men and women that are courageous enough to do the work and to look at themselves. I bow in your honor, and I'm like, I could not be, I get high on you doing that, because I know that you have a glimpse of peace, and anyone that's brave enough to do that, I'm like, it's braver than running into a burning building, because it's yourself. I'm like, that is not that. I admire that. And I'm like, and that collective.
Yes.
If this is going to happen, how can I wrap my head around this? If this is where we are right now, and I do not resist the reality of the circumstances, how is it that I can shift my perception to be able to draw peace from this situation?
Totally.
How can I do that? Wait, I choose to believe that this is, for our evolution, and is an invitation for that.
Totally.
And that's when I can quiet my mind, where I'm like, wait, no. I know you think this, and you're hearing all the chaos on the surface, but what you know to be true, TM, is that we're all getting situations, people, circumstances that will help us evolve. How could you have seen this in your entire past and then not know that this is happening for us right now?
Yes.
So when I view it through that lens, it allows me to have more peace with how I'm observing media, how I'm observing a product, because I'm like, yeah, I get that you want that, to sell me that bag, but it may be a different exchange. I may still buy the bag, but it's from a different place.
Totally.
I posted something yesterday, and I wish I'm so envious in the sweetest way of great writers, because if I could just pour out what I have inside, but I was trying to play with this idea about because I love fashion and I always have as a child, but I was thinking of the paradox about fashion, and I was trying to explain um, how you're trying to define the undefinable.
Mm.
Like you're trying to define, meaning like, oh, I wear these types of clothes, or I like this type of thing.
Right.
Or I'm trying to give myself definition of, oh, this is fashion, or this is a part of my identity, but it really could not even for a second define you.
Right.
But it somehow does. And
Right.
and it can be used as a tool. But when we are identified with the items as our self versus a way of defining, I was interested in that paradox. And I think that there are two actions that could be, the intention and motivation can be different. I think that our job is to do the inventory and sifting to be able to see where we're coming from to get that, to want that, to acquire that, to have the desire. Do you want the jobs so you can tell your parents that you're going to medical school? Do you want that bag because all of your friends have it? Do you want that marriage because you're, 38 and all of your friends are married? Do you want that, two sets of kids because you're 25 and you need to make that mark? Do you want that vacation home so you can be on the same street that your parents decided for you when you were a kid that you had to live on that street? Because all of those things are fine in quote unquote reality, meaning it's okay to have a shore house, but the intention and the goal of what you're seeking within those things are so big. Totally. And I think it's our job to really be able to be selfish enough to serve ourselves enough to do the work to see if it will actually give us what we're looking for. To really do that, to see if it will even give us what are we actually looking for through that thing.
Oh my God, totally.
Will that give me that?
You're right.
No, that's not going to give me that. But really, that's that part of self-care, I think, is, wait, I have to do that work to see if that will actually give me, and really be aware enough to see, what am I trying to get from this? It's not the house. It's not the shoes. What is it that I think I will feel or encompass or embody by that thing or circumstance? And when we're honest enough to own it, own what it actually is, not pretend, not say it's this, no, really own it. Even if it's dark, it's like, no, I want that because I want to feel this, or whatever it is. That is a place of just actualization that causes so much of a ripple effect in your life that it's magnetic when you have that.
Yes, I love that. And what's coming up for me is, and this is an inquiry I invite my clients to go into, is where are you creating from? Not necessarily what you're creating, but where are you creating from? And you described it as you could be creating from an ego place, which is a place of lack where you're trying to identify, you're trying to make up for something, or from a place of wholeness. And when you sort of distinguish between those two and you continue to do the work to come back to wholeness, to your truest essence at the deepest level, and then you create from there, it's okay to want the house or the car because the motivation is coming from a place of wholeness, not from lack or scarcity.
Amen. Amen. Right? Amen. It's you bottom lined it. That is a beautiful way of saying it, because it really is true. Because it can, on the surface, it can look the same way, but where did it come from?
Exactly.
Where did what will actually give you the thing that you're looking for? Yeah. Because a lot of the time we're so trained in thinking that those things will actually give us the big things, but they don't. They don't. So we're in a consumption society of going from one thing to the next, because we're just trained to consume to get that, because there is an exchange. You do get something out of it. originally.
Right.
And that's like the original hit of the drug.
Yeah. But it's always fleeting.
It's fleeting.
Yeah.
So you're just like consuming. And you're like, wait, this doesn't fill me up.
We are in extraordinary times and facing unprecedented challenges. Never in history have we been so connected yet so divided at the same time. Now more than ever, there is a fundamental need and desire for us to come together in community, to experience real and authentic connection with our fellow human beings, to be part of a tribe of people who are doing the challenging work of making sense of the world and their place in it, to have a safe space to be vulnerable and to get the support we so desperately seek as we navigate the complexity of modern life. This is why I have created the Being Community, an exclusive online community for people who are fed up with the toxicity, conflict, and censorship that is all pervasive on traditional social media sites. This community is for people who are doing the work of awakening, of personal development, of healing, of peeling back the layers of conditioning and unconscious programming. This is for the people who have the courage to say yes to life and to becoming the best version of themselves for their own benefit and the benefit of all. This private group will have all the functionality and benefits of a traditional Facebook group, but will also offer live group coaching calls, access to exclusive content and trainings, plus personalized guided meditations, and behind-the-scenes looks at the creation of the Being Podcast. At its essence, the Being Community is about coming together to co-create the future that we all want to live in. If this resonates with you, go immediately to being-podcast.com/community to sign up. And as a bonus, I'm offering a free 30-day trial right now, so it'll cost you nothing to come experience the magic of this intentional container. Again, go to being-podcast.com/community right now for more information and testimonials, and I'll see you on the inside. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, well, again, what's coming up for me is it's operating from a place of being. So, most people cannot sit by themselves. They can't sit in stillness because it's too uncomfortable. They can't, but that's where the only way to know yourself is by, and meditation is a big tool that I use, is by sitting in stillness, absent of any external influence. Right. And that's where you can come to know that essence. And then when you are out in the world, you can witness your reactivity or your motivations, excuse me, and you can become aware of them. And then with that newfound awareness, like, oh, there's that reaction, there's that motivation that comes from lack or from shame or from victim or from ego. And you can see it before you act on it. Right. And that's, again, where all of your power is, that gap between a stimulus where you used to be, the eye roll would throw you off and you'd be off on a tirade. Now he's like, okay, there's that same stimulus, but I have cultivated enough self-awareness to consciously choose something else.
That's the sit in the shift stir method.
Okay. So maybe this is a good time to sort of go through the method.
Yes.
Could you unpack it or just...
Yeah, that's the, so the stir is the inciting incident, whatever it is, the email, the guy didn't text you back, the boss that's whatever it is, your mother-in-law, your kids aren't doing this, or whatever it is that causes you to deviate in some negative way. You were on this one course and then within a second it changed.
Right.
And it could be like a millisecond. It's like all of a sudden you can feel your body and your body goes through changes either physiologically or emotionally that are indicators that you've shifted into a negative thought pattern when you're in a stir.
What are some of those physical indicators?
So here, I'll actually show you there. Biting your nails. I have like half of little pinky finger. I've just been working through it, stirring. I have a lot going on. As I said, my father recently passed, and
so sorry to hear that.
Thank you. It just has brought up so many things to the surface of, there's just so much, it was he's fundamental in our life. So it's like, hard to kind of sift through all of the repercussions and consequences of his passing. Meaning, all of those things cause like micro stirs, and they collect throughout the day, and you're like, I go to my nails to relieve that. I offload on my nails.
Right.
I'll sweat. I will, heart palpitations. Right. It could feel like anxiety. It could manifest physically. It could be a detachment. So many people have those early indicators that something has gone awry. Yes. They won't make eye contact. They'll, look down. They'll, become a people pleaser. We have all of these things that we do as indicators that we've deviated. So the first step is to recognize you've deviated in some way, either internally or externally.
Which is a really hard step to actually become aware of your own reactions.
Because most of the time for me, I always got to the end where I was cleaning up after my reactive behavior before I even knew I had a stir. I was like, wait, this was all one thing. Right. I could not separate that there were spaces. And I think that what you said earlier about cultivating the space in between the stimulus, and that really has been where if I could give you, the world, myself, anyone listening, the best advice that I give to myself and others is the power and potency and transformative power of the sit. If you want to change your life, it is being observant of the sit. And what I mean by the sit is it's not a physical posture. It's not a meditative posture where you're going to go and sit and like be with self. It is when you feel like you want to write that email, when you want to, drive after that guy that just cut you off on the expressway, when you want to down that bottle of wine because you do not want to feel what this stir is making you feel. You want to be anywhere but here. Right. That reactiveness, when you sit in communion with the thoughts and emotions and feelings, you allow yourself to actually feel without having to do anything. You don't have to know the solution. Your only job is to surrender to the sit.
I think you just described
give yourself the promise.
Totally.
Sorry.
I think you just described most people's nightmare, though, sitting with their own uncomfortable emotions.
It is.
It's awful.
It is awful. Yeah. And sometimes I can only sit for 2 minutes. Right. And I'm like, oh, fuck this. I'm not doing this. Right. Like, this is for somebody else. Right. Or I'll sit on something else. Or I'll sit later.
But you're totally right. That's where all of your power is. If you allow whatever emotion that's coming up just to be there, because I describe it as your emotional guidance system. Those emotions are there for a reason. And if you ignore them, you push them away, you numb them, you're missing the wisdom that they're there to impart in the first place.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
But that doesn't mean it's easy. Like I still get fits of anxiety and I'm like, fuck. And I allow myself to sit in it. And the beautiful thing is it tends to dissipate more quickly if you give it the light of your awareness. Right.
Oh, and so absolutely.
Even if it's incredibly painful, you take solace in the fact that it's temporary. Right. And it is going to pass. But the more I pushed it away, the more I tried to numb it with alcohol, the stronger it got because I wasn't listening to my own body's wisdom. Right. Yes. And so that's where you get into trouble. If you continue pushing it away, you need more alcohol, you need more distraction, you need more whatever it is in order to feel that sense of relief.
Similar to a craving.
Right.
Meaning a craving can only last for so long. It's allowing yourself to observe the craving because we think that we can't endure the craving.
Right.
And it really, a craving has a gestation.
Yeah.
It's not full on forever and ever. It's like, no. If we observe the craving, if we observe our desire to offload and get out of ourselves and make it a point, like, for me, I do like sit mantras where I'll say, on the other side of the sit, there are gifts. What are you trying to show me? I will not say no to this. I will not say no to what you are trying to show me.
Right.
And also, I think people think that the sit is giving someone free reign to be whatever it is, like to abuse them or no. The sit is allowing yourself to see what comes up within you in interpreting that stimulus, what they're doing.
Totally.
And that's the point of power. It redirects it from them to you. And the sit is really designed for you to create space and awareness in between that so you can start doing the work to uncover what is there. And 9 times out of 10, when we sit and do not react, we realize that our ego was giving us a false narrative, and we're so thankful that we did not react.
Yes.
Because when I say on the other side of the sit, there are gifts, I've seen it hundreds of times where I have, I've experienced a stir, then I've been sitting and I'm like, oh, I don't want to sit. They're mean, they're this, they're that. And then I allow that craving, that desire to offload it by reacting to reduce. And somehow when I do not react, I swear it somehow changes what is on the outside.
Totally.
Meaning the energy behind it.
Right.
It changes my interpretation of it. It lessens the stronghold on me when I allow it to run through me instead of trying to skip over it.
Totally.
And that's really when I can look back and think of all of the times that I wanted to react and I didn't. I'm so embarrassed by what my brain thought and was instructing me to do, because I was like, girl, you were so off on that. Nobody was trying to get you. Nobody was trying to hurt you. But I interpreted that information. It hit on my own, system. And it caused me to use my default defenses, pick up my swords, pick up my shield, my backpack, and go in guns blazing. But my job was to be able to just sit and soften and surrender to whatever it is that I was supposed to see.
Yes.
And I think I got selfish to the point in the best way where I was like, I'm not missing this.
Right.
I'm not missing this opportunity. Like, this is so momentous that if it's this big with energy, it's also equally as big for transformation.
Totally. And I think a trap that people fall into is they start to judge. They're sitting in their difficult emotions and they start to judge themselves. They're like, why am I still in this?
Yes.
Like, why? Like they go into blame and to victim and to shame. And I think it's so important to mention that in those instances, compassion and self-love are so important, because more often than not, the initial wound is a survival mechanism. It is something that was installed in you typically in childhood to keep you safe from perceived harm. And so giving the light of your awareness and your appreciation and your compassion to that part of you, because it is a part of you, even if it's not serving you anymore. And as soon as you do that, then it's an opportunity for it to heal or be released or to integrate, right? And that's what healing is, exactly what it is.
Yes. So there's a part in the book called, and this is like the crux of it, I would say, like, this is one of my favorite ones, is owning your awful.
Owning your awful. Exactly.
Owning your awful. It's like, and when I mean owning your awful, I think people want to change that. I've heard other people being like, why would you say it's awful? Why? Like, and there's this society that has, been cultivated where it's this toxic positivity
Yes.
that we have to say that everything is that. It's like, no, I want to, when I say awful, it's the value I have subscribed to it. It's the value that I consider this not something I want to share. I consider this something awful or bad or something to hide or be ashamed of. I don't like that I do that. So it's not that it's actually awful, but it's identifying that there's a negative thought pattern that goes inside my mind that normally debilitates me, and I try to hide it. And when I try to hide it, I disconnect with my humanity. And when I disconnect from my humanity, I disconnect with everyone. And when I do not integrate those parts of me that are awful, I can never be whole. Ever. Because they're fragmented parts of myself that are outside of me that I've deemed unworthy or uncool or whatever. And when I don't integrate them, there are parts of me outside. So how can I truly be whole? By owning 365 TM. All of it, the 50 shades of TM, the naughty one, the confident one, the insecure one, the sassy one, the aggressive one, all of those parts of me that we all have the ability to be at different times and spaces and through different experiences. When we own our jealous side, when we own our destructive side and say, oh, there I go again. Oh, there's my mind showing me that there's something like, oh, I always do that when I'm afraid. And owning that and being able to share with other people, being like, oh yeah, when this happens, I normally have this narration, and owning that and connecting. And everyone, or not everyone, but I think our society has been taught and indoctrinated in this way of only showing and only exploring and only, giving validation to the beauty or the sweet things, but really delving into the truth of what actually happens and how often we are same, but different.
Yeah.
You may deviate with this and I deviate with that. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to we were afraid and we're trying to protect ourselves.
Totally.
And when we share that and are in communion with other people that are able to own the darker aspects of self, that's where we're like, I'm in a community of other people that are seeking and are brave enough to own it.
Totally.
And not try to douse it with, oh, it's okay that you're this, or oh, it's no. It is what it is, and you don't have to. You can have compassion for it and have, but no, that there is a part of me that doesn't like the fact that I want to hurt people when they cut me off on the road. I can own that. I don't have to pretend that part of me does not happen.
Yeah. But in owning it, there's also an opportunity to evaluate whether it's serving you or not and be able to shift it into something else, right? And like you were talking about earlier, it's worth investigating our motivations, because often there's many motivations and often a handful of them are conscious, and so we have to become aware of all of our motivations, and the unconscious ones are maybe coming from a place of lack of wholeness or not enoughness or blame or victim. And those responses, like, okay, I do respond jealously. That's a difficult word to say in this situation. What is that motivation? Why is that reaction there? Right. And so owning it is also an opportunity to shift it if need be, or just let it be.
And owning it and being like, yeah, I get jealous. Like it takes the buzz out of it. It's like, totally. It's like you can catch me being jealous.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I'm not rocked by that.
Right.
I'm not, it's like, no, that's a part of me. I don't have to only give you the like pleasurable, sweet, kind, palatable versions of me, because when I don't share that with others, I believe that those things should be hidden. And that's when I can't have wholeness, because, and I don't believe that everyone is deserving of all of your stuff, but I believe to create deep connect. We're hardwired for connection. We need to be seen. And when we share our stories, we share everyone's collective story. And when we have a culture that is owning that and really extrapolating and giving breath and consciousness, meaning sharing that, it allows us to collectively grow, because you're like, oh my God, that happens to me too.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, I do that. Oh my gosh, I used to do that. And you're able to reflect on, well, what changed that you don't have to do that anymore? What was your realization that used to be you? What changed? So you can impart that on someone else and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that used to crippled me, but now it's, I think of it as like things becoming benign.
Right.
It was like before they were, just catastrophic and caused like chaos in your body. And then now something is benign. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, yep, I'm a raging bitch. It's like, you don't want to be, but owning that, it's like, yeah, I can be. Yeah. You're right. That is okay. And it not knowing in what situations am I that, and am I comfortable with my inventory about what's going on within that story. And I think that makes you more, you're less susceptible to other people's ideas about you when you own it.
Totally.
You're like, okay, you think I'm this or that. It's like, you're right. I am.
Yes.
And that becomes more of a, like, you're just more powerful within yourself, because you're like, I don't need to resist my humanity.
Right.
I don't have to resist that or pretend that that's not there. It's when I honor those parts of myself and have compassion for the part of me that wants to control people, compassion for the part of me that wants to, drink or do drugs or, gamble or overeat or whatever it is that I do, like having compassion. What is it that I'm soothing when I'm doing that? Yeah, I do that. And that's okay. But I'm involved in exploring why. But I don't have to feel bad while I'm exploring. I can just own it.
Totally.
It's just like, that's where I'm at.
This is it. Beautifully articulated, Tinamarie. And what's coming up for me is what we're talking about earlier on how this is sort of a cultural wide issue where, the social fabric, the social currency, especially in the West, is just this superficial likability. Like our engagement with most people in our lives is so superficial that we're just communicating to get whatever I need from you, whether that be a business deal or money or sex or love or whatever it is that I want from you. It's a very superficial interaction. And so our connection on a day-to-day basis is incredibly shallow. And so we're missing this fundamental connection with other human beings because we don't feel safe enough to be ourselves fully. We don't, and that's a primary reason why I started this podcast, in order to have these conversations that are raw, authentic, vulnerable, so other people can say, "Oh my God, Tinamarie's story is so similar to mine, and I didn't realize I was doing this. Now I see it." There's an opportunity for them to own it and to change. And so,
and to even recognize it. The power of just recognition. Of being able, and I think that people have these ideas and facades of who they are, and when we cage ourselves by not sharing those things, we actually lose our sense of self. Meaning we disconnect and we don't allow ourselves to be seen and also to be loved. We block out our true essence of being loved for what we actually are. What we actually are. And I think that there's opportunities, no matter what the circumstance, no matter what business you are, to infuse that. And I do, like, say I'll have an opportunity, somebody will send me a product and it'll be, a fashion thing. I love fashion, but that does not light me up in a way. Like, I don't care to tell someone where my jeans are from. Right. But I'm happy to talk about the shift stirrer method and how my fashion flows through that and what
Right.
I've seen through that, but I cannot just, that's a short fuse. Like somebody's willing to pay me for that, but that doesn't give my true, like there has to be that duality for me to feel like it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a value, meaning it's a valuable, it's giving me nourishment, and it's also going to provide someone else value. It's like, it can't just be fashion. It can't just be that. It has to have this duality because that's what makes it valuable to me. It makes it valuable, meaning it's fun to know the story. Like I and I say this with, I hope that people can understand this, but in my current lifestyle, I could walk into any store and buy, any fashion item that I want. And it is so boring. It is so boring because there's no texture, there's no feeling, there's no story. So for me, I'm on Etsy 24/7. And my girlfriends are like, why don't you just like go to Bergdorf or what? And I'm like, it doesn't give me that charge. I need to have something else. And that's the value subscribed to me. No, somebody else could be like, the value is being able to buy the latest Chanel thing. I can do that, but that doesn't fill me up.
Right.
That doesn't excite me. What excites me is like, okay, I got this from this, 85-year-old woman that was, had these robe collections, and I could find that and I sourced that. That's what gave me that burst, that real like excitement. It doesn't excite me to go into a store and just buy it. It's easy. It's way more exciting for me to find a way to be able to have fashion in my life in a way that is not so easy.
Right.
Anybody can look good going in and saying to a personal shopper, buy me all these 5 things that are trendy. But there's something so valuable and so cool about something reimagined and not so expected and not so it's like no, I subscribe the value of this being beautiful, not someone else because somebody else wore it.
Yeah.
I was at a antique store the other day, and this was a stir. I saw this little like vessel, and it said beautiful handmade vessel, and I remember looking at the tag and saying, don't tell me it's beautiful. Like, don't tell me it's beautiful. I'll tell you if it's beautiful. It was like directly marketed for me to observe that beautifully. And I was like, wait, no, that's my value judgment. And I think that when we get stronger in our ability to see what is actually valuable to us, it's not a currency, it's not how much something costs, but the value that it brings to you. Meaning, does it give you excitement? Does it make you happy? Did you have whatever that is? Getting clear on what gives you that genuinely.
Yeah.
Not because your ego is satisfied that you could afford the $5,000 purse or the whatever. What is it that really gives it value? Is it the hunt? Is it because you saw it on somebody on Instagram? Is it that? Like, what is the value? And subscribing or prescribing your own value on something is a point of power. And when you have the ability to do that for yourself, you're like, no, this is of value. My painting, random. I don't paint, but I paint. That's so valuable to me. There's no value in the paint, but it's so, I don't paint for the painting. I paint to paint. And having that's my reward. That's the value. And I think that when we start doing these things of what we want to offload or what we want to explore, really looking into what gives something value and what am I really looking for? What really actually makes me happy? And if it's from the ego, explore that. What is it that my ego is so happy and rejoiced by when I can buy that house or do that thing or whatever? What is it seeking? because ultimately it doesn't normally get you there.
Right. I think fundamental to everything you're talking about is that sense of wholeness, and coming from and creating from and operating from that sense of wholeness. And it takes effort, and it takes responsibility, and it takes self-trust, and it takes practice to continue coming back to that place of wholeness and operating from there. And being aware when you do drop into stories or ego or reactivity, and like you said earlier, this work never ends. It just goes on, which is exciting. But just realizing that you will continue to peel back the layers for your entire life. It doesn't end, but it's so rewarding, this work. So
I wouldn't trade it for a thing.
me neither. It's been really difficult and painful, but I wouldn't trade it for anything either.
Wouldn't trade it. I love that. It's what I value most.
Right.
And
Me too.
really, truly is this journey and my ability to either cause myself pain or drop into peace. And
Totally.
I have the access to that point. And that point of power is I have the ability. It's just my choosing. And when I'm suffering, I know that it's through my own doing, and it's not someone else. And that is, how powerful is that? It
and
doesn't
it's
have,
so freeing.
You're not out of control because they can't do anything to you. But when you realize that, you're like, oh, like really, I do this. I injure myself.
Yes.
I injure myself through my mind, and I can choose that. And when I start to get fractions, and this is, like you said, it's an ongoing thing, but even when I catch myself of allowing myself to be convinced that it's someone else, like, oh girl, honey, boo-boo, come back, boo-boo, you better come back. You are cruising for a bruising. That is not the way. And it's like a little indicator, like, says to me, like, come back. That's not that direction. That's not going to give you what you're really actually looking for. You think it's that, but you're really looking in the wrong direction. So when you return to self and go back to yourself, that's really the reward.
Wow. So much wisdom in this conversation. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you so much for your time today. So
my pleasure.
If there is somebody listening that is deeply resonating with your story and what you're saying, they're maybe just coming to some sense of awareness, what would be some first steps, some like really practical things that they could do to start cultivating this awareness, to start moving into wholeness?
So there's two things. When you've deviated, when you can acknowledge when you've deviated, write down when you've deviated. And I like to keep a little bit of a logbook of like how often and at what times, what places in and times in my life I am more apt to be like that. Like I've noticed a lot more stirs after my dad passing, just because I'm interacting with so many more people, and I'm also more sensitive, meaning everything's up right now. So just noticing those micro injuries to self by a stir, like these little tiny injuries where you're like, oh, when that person didn't call me back, or, oh, when, there's so many things that happen throughout the day. When I didn't get my UPS package, oh, when, they didn't thank me for the thank you card, or whatever it is, those little micro injuries that we cause to ourselves. Do an inventory of your day and just say like, oh, where did I lose my power? Like, where did I get a little pulled? Where did I get that little thing? And sometimes it could be a full thing where it's like, oh, well, I got in a fight.
Right.
Or I yelled at my boss, or whatever it is, but really just taking a day of observing when that happens and kind of just being like, oh yeah, when it could be as simple as they didn't call me back, and you'll be able to kind of graph and chart how often that is happening. And when it's apt to happen at a higher rate. So it gives you the ability to be like, oh yeah, I did see that when I'm with my family, this is more likely. So I'm going to make sure that I, definitely sit a lot more. I'm going to prepare to go into a situation knowing I'm going to have to sit. You know what I mean?
Totally,
Where you're like,
totally.
okay, I'm preventative, whatever. It's like, oh, I know that I'm going to be challenged. I
Right.
know that this is going to happen, but I can preempt this by knowing that I will choose this in advance. So the second thing would be, when you desire to go outside of yourself to react, to externalize, to soothe yourself by calling your best friend and getting them on your side, by drinking that bottle of wine, by yelling at that person, by sending that nasty text, sending the, spiteful email, even a girl texting the guy that is obviously not into you to be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, that desire is like your ego's attempt to get something because you want to be affirmed, going outside of yourself. So that stir is, oh, maybe he doesn't like me. What can I do to change that? Okay, let me come up with this text message to go outside of myself to cause something, to be able to have you either confirm or deny that I'm okay.
Wow.
So recognizing that and being able to notice and sit and you could give yourself a 2-hour time period and say like, you know what? I know I want to write this text right now. I know I do. And I'm going to write it out. I'm going to put it in my notes, but I'm going to sit with myself inside my mind, even while I'm working, even when I'm with my kids, but I'm going to allow myself to feel what it feels like not to do that. And then if I want to, I can. 9 times out of 10, you're not really going to want to do that anymore. Something changes when you allow yourself to sit. The energy changes when you pick yourself.
Totally.
So that's my advice.
Incredibly powerful, practical tools. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find your book and reach out to you online?
Yes. So it's you can find me at Tinamarie Clark on Instagram. Excuse me. And you can find my book on Amazon. It's called The Shift Stir Method. And yeah, just find me on there. And if anybody is going through any type of stir or they want to go through anything, I'm always available for that online. If somebody's like, hey, I'm, knee deep in a sit and all I want to do is get out of myself and do X, Y, and Z, I'm always happy to talk to someone in that moment because it is such a point of power to be in that moment. So, or whatever step you are in the method, you can always write to me because whenever I speak to other people, it just reignites that passion and, strengthens my own work and what I know, because when I get to see it, other people applying it and like I said, getting high on your own supply, when you see other people doing it, you're like, oh my gosh, like you just feel so happy because you know what is at the end of them doing that work. They're cultivating confidence in themselves and trusting that they're powerful enough to sit. That is the coolest thing ever. Observing and being a part of that is, I feel so lucky to be able to do that. So anybody can reach out to me, please. If you have anything, I'm, up at 2:00 in the morning, texting people back.
Awesome. I will, of course, put all those links in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much for being here. I have one more question for you, Tinamarie, and it's this. If you were to take all of your experiences, all of your knowledge, all the wisdom gained, and distill it down to one message or one sentence, what would it be?
I'm going to borrow this from Eckhart Tolle, but it's always given me peace. Life will give you whatever experience is necessary for the evolution of your consciousness. How do you know this is necessary? Because it's happening at this exact moment.
Oh my God, that just gave me chills right down to my soul. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, and that's like my tried and true. That's like whenever I like get wonky or whatever, I'm like, okay, wait. This is for my soul's evolution, whatever is happening.
So powerful. So powerful. Thank you so much, Tinamarie, for
Patrick,
sharing
thank you
your wisdom.
so much.
Yes.
This was awesome. And I really just, I feel like my day is like, it was like slow running in the beginning. And now I feel like I'm on a jetpack. Thank you so much.
Oh,
This
my
was
pleasure.
awesome.
Yes. I would love to have you back on the show. I feel like we're just getting started. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and let's keep in touch. Awesome.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Tinamarie. We'll talk to you real soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please do subscribe, rate, and review. You can also follow us on Instagram at Being with Patrick Cook. And don't forget to check out the Being community. Go to being-podcast.com/community now to check it out. We'll see you next time. And remember, live your being.